Good morning, everybody. It is Jeff Avery, aka Captain Awesome, owner and operator and lead naturalist of Cape Cod Learning Tours. We do hands-on marine science tours on Cape Cod and beginning to expand to other areas. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about something that some folks have asked me about, which is my continuing use of the term Hospice for Humanity, and why I think that humanity only has about 250 years left on Earth. So I'll try to keep this very short and sweet in using some terms that everybody can understand. I understand that there are people out there that believe that the climate change issue is a hoax, that it's something that is false information, and I will tell you that there are also people who think that the world is flat and that vaccines cause autism, and all of those things are completely incorrect. So if you're going to start a big argument on here that climate change is a hoax and climate change isn't real, then I'm not interested in having that discussion, because it is real. And as Neil deGrasse Tyson is fond of saying, doesn't matter whether you believe it or not, the science is true. So here goes. You've heard me talk a lot about the idea that people need to be nicer to each other, because we are at the end of the time of the human race. And I believe that the reason that we're at the end of the human race is because we have put all of these emissions into the air that have increased the greenhouse gases, which has started the warming process, which is happening much faster than it ever has in the past. And as humans, we're not going to be able to adapt to that quick enough. We may have big brains, we may have amazing tool-using abilities, but this is a crisis on a global scale that we are not going to be able to stop or reverse, for sure. And mostly that's because, for the most part, we refuse to even discuss it or talk about it or believe that it is real. So there are some clearly observable things that are happening right now that we know, that we can see, that we can measure, that indicate that the Earth is warming at an alarming rate. There are a couple of observable effects that we can talk about. Many of them have other factors as well. There is not always one single factor that contributes to this, but these are a couple of them. One, we can actually measure the amount of carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere. We have a data set over time that shows that that amount of material is actually increasing. It's a clearly observable, measurable amount. We all know what greenhouse gases are. We've all walked into an actual greenhouse and understand that the Earth is simply a greenhouse on a much, much larger scale. And as we continue to put carbon dioxide and methane and water vapor into the atmosphere, it will continue to get worse. It is absolutely measurable. We know that phytoplankton, which generates 75% of our oxygen, since 1950, that population of phytoplankton, and by phytoplankton I mean the amount of chlorophyll in the ocean, we can discuss that at much length later, has been reduced by almost 40%. That's 40% of most of the oxygen producing capability of the planet. And as the water gets warmer and more acid, that phytoplankton will continue to reduce in numbers. At some point, it'll be unable to even produce any of the oxygen that we need whatsoever. Measurably, we've been able to see the glacial decline. We've been able to see glaciers melting, retreating. On average, around the world, the thickness of glaciers has been reduced by 8.2 meters. That's a huge amount of water that has been released from those glaciers, and it has to go somewhere. We know that heat waves are becoming stronger and lasting longer. 5 of the top heat waves in recorded history have happened since the year 2000 in the UK. This is a pretty amazing thing. In the entire century of 1900 to 2000, there were 23 qualified heat wave events. Since 2000 to 2018, there were 59. It's becoming the new normal. during these heat waves, thousands of people die. We've seen hurricanes become more frequent and more powerful. This is because as the ocean warms up and that water evaporates into the atmosphere, they gather more energy from the heat and more energy from the water, and then they dump torrential amounts of rain on land, creating huge flooding like we saw first maybe in Hurricane Katrina, and then Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Harvey, and this is going to continue. These are once-in-a-lifetime hurricanes that are happening sometimes 3 times in a year now. These are all measurable effects. We know that we have to do something. As a matter of fact, what we probably should do is right now stop burning fossil fuel altogether. That may be the only way that we'll be able to save the planet. The IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Control, at the Kyoto Agreement, pushed for a limit to try to stop warming of the planet at 2 degrees Celsius increase. We are not even anywhere close to that. As a matter of fact, since the Kyoto Agreement, we have put more CO2 into the atmosphere, more emissions into the atmosphere than we did in that whole time up until the Kyoto Agreement. In all of human industrial, movement until then, we put in less after we put in more. So we're not really trying very hard to do anything about it. What are the results of 2 degrees of warming, which in fact is probably going to be 3? Most scientists agree that at the very minimum we're going to have 3 degrees of warming by 2100. Folks, that's only 80 years away. That's a human lifetime. If you have grandchildren that are being born right now or children that are being born right now, this is going to play out over their lifetime. First thing, it's going to be less food. The population of the planet is going to double. We know another effect is that the number of insects on the planet has been reduced by about 9% per decade. Insects are the engine that drive food production. They need to pollinate the wheat, the corn, the rice, the sorghum, which is 66% of the world's caloric intake. We're killing off those insects. So we're going to have less food. It's going to get warmer. Wheat is not going to grow in the same regions that it does now. We can't simply move wheat northward. The soil is not fertile enough. We can't do it. So we're going to have double the population and half of the food. The desertification of the Mediterranean. It's literally going to become a desert. Nothing will grow there. No olives, no grapes, no oranges, no fruit trees, nothing. The equator is going to basically become unlivable. We need to regulate our temperature. The only reason we're an endotherm, that means we generate our heat from inside. One of the only reasons that's efficient is because the air is cooler than we are, and we can radiate that heat off into the atmosphere. As it gets warmer in certain areas, we are not going to be able to do that, and that's going to cause the heat, stroke, and death of many hundreds and thousands and maybe millions of people. Sea level rise is going to occur. It's apropos that I happen to be in Fort Lauderdale, just up the street from Miami, which is one of those areas which is going to be absolutely hardest hit. It's going to be underwater by 2100. Also, only 1% of the water on the planet is available as fresh water, and only 1% of that is available as readily good drinking water. As the planet warms, this is going to evaporate and create more droughts. We're not even going to have water to drink. What are the short-term and long-term repercussions of that? Millions, tens of millions, possibly billions of people are going to have to be moved. The Marshall Islands are currently going underwater. Many South Sea Islands going underwater. Florida is going to be underwater. Cape Cod is going to be underwater. The southern tip of India is going to be underwater. Will it all be underwater? No. But will a vast majority of the cities that are coastal, that drive the economy of the planet, be underwater? Yes. And those millions of people are going to have to go somewhere. And this climate does not care about the black lines that we put on the map. So, all of those things come together, and things that we can't even predict mean that we are going to put tremendous stressors on the current populations of the planet, of humanity. As stressors increase, so do disease. We're going to see hunger, famine. We're going to see people dying in heat waves. We're going to see people dying in hurricanes. We're going to see people dying in cities as they refuse to move. And we're going to be dealing with all of these things on a short-term basis. How do we deal? Right now we're dealing with coronavirus. That's put everything else on hold. How do we deal with an influx of 300,000 refugees from the Marshall Islands? That puts things on hold. How do we deal with an influx of all of the people who live in the equatorial zone? That puts things on hold. So I think that we're going to be dealing with these very small issues so much that we're not going to be able to look at the larger issues, and we've already shown that we're not willing to take the steps to make the changes right now. And this is a ongoing process that cascades, right? Like, we know that the taiga is melting. There are billions of pounds and tons of CO2 and methane trapped in the vegetative matter that's been frozen for years. Now it's thawing, being released into the atmosphere. The ice sheets are going to melt. The less ice sheet there is, the less reflectivity, the more warmth that's going to happen. So it's going to exponentially increase as time goes on. At some point in time, it'll be unsafe to simply go outside. And I'm not sure that humanity will be able to survive that. Am I hopeful? I'd like to think that maybe we'll come up with some technological fix or some technological thing that can do that. Some scientists have talked about literally spraying particles into the atmosphere so that we can shade the earth and create cooling, maybe over certain areas. However, this is something that would cost trillions of dollars and would have to be done on an ongoing basis. We have the technology to turn everything on the planet into alternative energy. We can run our cars on electricity. We can put solar panels on our house. We can generate with wind. We can generate with geothermal. We can generate with hydroelectric. But there's big moneyed interests that have a lot at stake here that do not want to give that up. And I'd like to see them look at the good of humanity, including their own grandchildren. So while I am somewhat hopeful, 10% hopeful, I'm 90% positive that by 2270 there won't be any humans left, or they'll be so small a group that they won't be able to reproduce effectively. You should know that of the 5 major extinctions that have occurred on the planet, 4 of them have been caused by a similar quick progression of greenhouse gases and global warming, some of it by volcanic activity. For instance, the first major extinction of the dinosaurs was actually when the continents were dividing and there was a major volcanic activity there spewing lots of stuff into the atmosphere. We've kind of settled down since then. We're the ones causing the problem. We're the ones that are going to have to fix it. So that's it. I think we should all be nice to each other. We should help those people that need help, both people who need coffee and people who are going to need homes and food and places to go. I'm going to put a couple links at the end of this video for some books that I think you should read that are well thought out, well researched, with interviews with lots of scientists. And as I said in the beginning, I'm not inviting a debate here on whether or not global warming is happening. It is happening, definitively. It is happening. We definitively are the cause of it. We can argue all day long about how bad it's going to be, how much rise we're going to have, but we have pretty good numbers. I recommend that everybody look at the International Panel for Climate Change website and get an idea of just what we're looking at. They're using science that they consider, hundreds of scientists consider, inarguable. The numbers are there. If you do a little research and learn how to read them properly, you'll see it for yourself. So, that said, I love all of you. I love all of my fellow Earthlings. I love traveling. I love these beautiful places that I've been. And I hope that they continue on, and I hope that people are here to appreciate it. The planet's going to survive. I don't know if we will. All right, you guys have a great day. Love you. See you later.